Rescue workers continue to search for survivors in the rubble of a Ukrainian shopping mall hit by Russian missiles. Authorities say 36 people are still missing. The attack killed at least 18 people and left nearly 60 others wounded. Russian missiles struck the Amstar Mall in the city of Kremenchuk at 4 p.m. yesterday. Ukraine says more than 1,000 people were inside at that time. The entire building has been reduced to rubble. Ukrainian diplomats have called for a UN Security Council meeting today on the strikes, while President Volodymyr Zelensky has labeled the attack a brazen terrorist act. Russia's defense ministry says it had fired missiles at an arms depot for Western weapons, and ammunition explosions caused a blaze at the nearby mall that it says was disused and empty at the time. The claim is plainly contradicted by wounded survivors.
Чувство таке, що просто ти летиш, я якось так вперед, знаєш, вперед головою туди кудись, і по тілу б'є, щось б'є, осколки це чи що це падає, все просто розриває щось. І потім приземляєшся і, не знаю, може без сознання, може сознання, я навіть не поняла нічого. Я відкриваю глаза і тут дві якісь плити, типа, і я кричу «Помогите!» І откуда-то вода якась,
да? Вода текла.
Вода, може ця вода нас в чувство привела.
On the battlefields of the Donbas region, the Luhansk governor says 8 residents, including a child, were killed by Russian shelling when they gathered to get drinking water in Lysychansk. 21 others were wounded. He says Ukrainian forces still controlled the city, but concedes that its loss is possible as Russia continues to pour resources into the fight. The advances in Luhansk have given Moscow its biggest victories in weeks, with the now ruined city of Severodonetsk falling under Russian control last week. Well, Kieran McKillen joins us live now from Lviv. Kieran, what hopes are there, if any, for Ukraine in turning the tide of battle in the Donbas region?
Well, this all comes down to guns, big guns, artillery pieces, as they're called. It has turned into a duel of artillery between, very World War II style, between Russia and Ukraine. Some estimates say that Russia is firing in 60,000 shells per day, and that compares to the Ukrainian 5,000 to 6,000 shells that they're firing in the other direction. And they're having to conserve some of those shells because they're running low of stocks. Vadim Skibitsky is the deputy head of Ukraine's military intelligence. He said everything in the Donbass now depends on what the West gives us, and that's in terms of guns and also in terms of artillery, because one of the problems is that NATO shells are 105 and 155 millimeters, but the guns that the Ukrainians have operate on the old Soviet gauge of 122 millimeters and 152 millimeters. So basically, the Pentagon and other arms dealers are out on the open market trying to source those shells, but it's very hard to come by. And it all now depends on these new multiple launch rocket systems that the Ukrainians might get in. This Battle of the Donbass really is a World War II style battle of artillery.
Well, meantime, those strikes in Kremenchuk, not hard to see why they've actually sparked global outrage and denouncement of war crimes. What do you think is Ukraine's next move?
Well, we've had an AP team there today. This morning, that shopping mall was still smouldering from the effects of that missile that attacked it. We've just had an update from Kirlo Chermoshenko. He's one of the President Zelensky's aides. He says 20 dead, 25 in hospital, and 40 people still missing. And what they're trying to do now, they're combing through, looking for remains. They're trying to identify those remains. Very badly charred bodies there in that shopping mall. Irina Venediktova, the prosecutor general, has been down there. She says that as well as a case of war crimes against Russia for this, she's also going to pursue a civil case against the owners of the mall, because it seems that they were putting out on social media that they would stay open during these air raid sirens. And this is a point about the safety protocols that were not followed, because people, when those air raid sirens, and there was one during this attack, when those air raid sirens sound, people have 7 to 10 minutes to get out of there. So that's something that moving forward, Ukrainians will be aware of to try and move out of these buildings. Vadim Denishenko, he's an interior ministry advisor. He said that Russia has begun, a couple of days ago, Russia has begun a massive and indiscriminate campaign against Ukrainian civilians and cities.
Well, many thanks for those updates, Kieran McKillen in Lviv.